Well, what is that object? That object is a shirt. It was a shirt that was sewn in Nigeria in 1964. And why did I choose this shirt? I have to thank my wife, Darlene Clover, for suggesting. Didn't know what kind of an object would you choose to talk about participatory research. But let me tell you why I chose this shirt. Um, I had the opportunity as a student, as a university student, of studying for some time at the University of Nigeria in 1964. And the experience was the first step in opening my eyes to other ways of understanding knowledge and other ways of understanding the world. I had been, a student of political science in an American university, and I ended up studying at the University of Nigeria. And I had three Nigerian professors. Dr. Mdem, who was an anthropologist, Jeffrey Nnosu, who was a political scientist, and I can't remember the name of the historian. This was 1964. Nigeria had received its independence, political independence, in 1961. These professors told us that we are not teaching political science that like you've been studying. We are not teaching anthropology like you have been studying. We are not teaching history like you have studying. We are teaching anthropology from an African-centered perspective. We have an Afrocentric view of political science, and we have the African eyes in history. And for me, I was 18 years old. I couldn't believe what they were saying. What do you mean there's an Afrocentric idea of history? What do you mean there's African view of anthropology? I mean, political science it's what's in the book. You just read it, what's in the book. It's all the same everywhere. And they said no. They said that history is told very differently from different people and context and history. And political science is extremely different if you start to examine, African traditions in political work. And anthropology, the European approach to anthropology was, in fact, did damage to us as part of the colonial control of our countries, and that awakened me to this idea that knowledge is contextually very different, and raised the question of whose knowledge counts, and why are some people's knowledge so dominant. So when so I taught in a secondary school for a couple of years in Nigeria, and then I decided to continue to work on my PhD, and I studied at the UCLA in California that had a big African Studies department, and I had been attracted to this position because of my admiration for the ideas and the political ideas and the community ideas of the late Julius Nyerere. Julius Nyerere was the father of independence, but he was a remarkable intellectual who was searching for a path, an African path to development, and not to just copy kind of Western development, and neither to copy what was still strong in those days, a communist path. He was interested in what he called ujamaa, which is an approach to development and building community. Well, I showed up there at the Institute of Adult Education with training, perfectly good training, but very, very conventional social science research training, the training that I'd received as a doctoral student at UCLA. And I arrived in Tanzania at a time when they really wanted research to help build the a Tanzania built on participatory development and respect for the knowledge of the experiential knowledge of people living particularly in rural areas. And so over a period, I was there for 5 years. And so over a period of 5 years, many of us all of us who had been trained in conventional Eurocentric Western, academic disciplines, we found ourselves frustrated. We found ourselves out of not supporting, finding ourselves, not supporting the vision that Nyerere was calling for. Why do I say that? Because the research methods that I had been taught were put the researcher at the center of knowledge construction, and people's knowledge was simply something that you would analyze, but the knowledge construction was done by an academic. So imagine a young fellow from, just coming from outside of Tanzania. And here I was, creating knowledge, writing papers, trying, and with the idea that I am creating the knowledge. But what did I create? What could I create the knowledge with? The only thing that any researcher can create knowledge with is what's in their head, what kind of experiences. And slowly over that period of years, and in conversation with people like Maria Lisa Swans, people like Marjorie Mbellini, people like Yusufu Kassam, people like Kemal Mustafa, we had a visit from Paulo Freire, who at the time was in exile in Geneva, and he came to visit us. And over time, we came to realize that the approach to research, which we had been trained in, was a very colonial, was a very academic centered, and it did not respect the the vision that Nyerere had called for, and it did not draw on the on African approaches to knowledge construction. And so it was during that period that this idea that we called participatory research first came up. And that particular shirt, which I still have. I have many. Those of you who know me well, I have many shirts, and they're all there. This is the first one. All of my African shirts are all made from that same pattern, but I've got many different colors. But it's I am my roots. My roots and my door, into seeing knowledge, in very different ways, and are really based on those early the great good fortune of my early years in Africa. So that's the story of the shirt.